Hello viewers, this Dow Too Fast here. In today's video I'll be doing a brake service on my 2019 Honda Odyssey. This procedure will apply to all Honda Odysseys from 2018 and newer. This service is to replace the rear brake pads and rotors. I'll show you all the steps to do this job, so let's get started. Here I'll jack up the back end of this Honda Odyssey. What you want to do is place a floor jack underneath the rear cross member. Place a jack saddle underneath that vertical plate that's in the middle of that cross member, and slowly jack up the entire back end. Now place jack stands underneath the jacking point on both sides. Now slowly lower the car onto the jack stands. Put a wheel chock on the front wheel. Remove the wheel by removing the 5 22mm lug nuts. Right here is a brake fluid reservoir. Now if you're not sure if anybody topped off the fluid in the past, what you want to do is go ahead and remove this cap and then put a rag underneath it. So when you're compressing the piston in the brake caliper, the fluid is going to be pushed back up here, and if it overflows, then it'll drip onto the towel. And later when you're done with the brake service, you can put the cap back on. Now for this Honda Odyssey and many other newer Honda vehicles, there's an electronic parking brake actuator on this rear brake. Before you do any work, make sure the parking brake is not engaged, and if it is, go ahead and disengage it right now. Right here is the electronic parking brake actuator. Inside there is an electric motor that drives a bunch of gears, and it pushes the piston in the caliper to clamp onto this rotor when the parking brake is engaged. When you're servicing the rear brake and you need to replace the pads, you need to retract the mechanism inside the electronic parking brake. If you don't do that, you will not be able to push that piston into the caliper. Now there are two ways you can do this. One is you can use a high-level scan tool to put the electronic parking brake in maintenance mode. When you do that, it'll retract this and you can work on the brake. And also I do want to mention not all OBD scan tool can do that function. If you're shopping for a scan tool, make sure it has bidirectional function. But if you don't have that type of scan tool, the other way is to remove this actuator and then manually wind the gear back in. In this video I'll show you both methods. Now the first method I'll show you is service this brake without a scan tool. And I'll need to remove the two 13mm bolts that you see right here and remove this caliper. Now earlier when I was trying to loosen this bolt, the slide pin here was also spinning. If you want to prevent that from spinning, put a 17mm wrench on here, and while holding it in place, we can knock loose the 13mm bolt at the back. Carefully lift this off. So right here is a brake caliper, and here's a look at the back. This is the electronic parking brake actuator, and this is held on by two T30 Torx screws. I'm going to remove these two screws. Now you can carefully take this off. And here's a look at the actuator itself. So this electric motor here will drive the gear inside here and spin this to push a piston out. Now to retract this, I believe this is a T45 Torx. Now the biggest size I can find in my garage is a T40. So I have this slotted screwdriver, which I'll use to retract it, and it fits perfectly in here. And what you want to do is turn this clockwise all the way until it doesn't turn anymore. And stop right there. So now I'm able to push this piston back in the caliper. Using this brake caliper tool here, I'll push this piston back. Now I can install the actuator back on. Make sure to seat it all the way around. We install the two T30 screws on the electronic parking brake. Now just rest the caliper right here. Go ahead and remove the old brake pads. Next I need to remove this bracket that's holding this rotor in, and it's held on by two 17mm bolt that you see right here. Now to remove this rotor, you need to remove this Phillips screw. Often this rusted on really bad. You can try using an impact screwdriver like this one here. And what that'll do is when you put this on here and you hammer the end, you'll give it a slight twist with a hammer action each time you hammer it. Now if that doesn't work, you may need to drill this out. Now mine came off very easily because when I first bought the car new, the first week I had it, I took the wheel off and I removed the screw and put anti-seize on it. This way I knew it was going to be easy to take it off later on. Now you can remove the rotor. Let me show you the new rotors I'll be installing. These ones are made by the company Centric, and the part number on this one is 120.40099. And here's a look at one of the rotor. And for the brake pads, I'll be using the Centric Posi-Quiet brake pads. These are ceramic pads, part number 105.19540. Here are the brake pads, and it comes with new hardware. Now one thing to know is when you're buying brake parts, the rotors are sold individually, so you need to buy two of these, whereas the brake pads, one box, has both the left and right side. With a new rotor, you want to clean the surface, spray brake clean on it. Do the same thing for the other side. Use a wire brush and clean the surface. Spray brake clean on it and clean it. Before I put the rotor on, I'm going to put a thin film of anti-seize around the edge right here. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. And spread it out with your finger. Now install the new rotor. Now make sure you line up the screw hole on the rotor with the screw hole that's on the back here. Again, I'll put a little anti-seize on this. Now looking at this bracket, we need to remove the old hardware that's on it right now. Also go ahead and pull back on the slide pin. Pull this out. Now you'll notice one slide pin has a rubber bushing on it. Make sure you keep track of where it came out of. This one goes on the left side, and the other slide pin that doesn't have the rubber bushing go on this side. I'm going to apply some Sil-Glyde onto a slide pin and spread it out. Now you can reinstall it. Also use a wire brush and clean the surface right here. I'm going to put a little bit of synthetic brake grease on the surface right here. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. Now you can install the new hardware from the brake pads. and make sure these are seated in properly. Now I can reinstall this bracket and install 2 17mm bolts. And you need to tighten these 2 bolts to 65 foot-pounds. So let me show you a side-by-side look of the old pad and the new pad. Now you'll notice on this one here, there's a warning tab. This brake pad will be installed on the inside. And here's a new one. This one that goes on the outside. Another thing you'll notice is on this inside pad, Honda actually installed 2 shims. There's one on the brake pad and one on top of this. What I'll do is I'm going to just duplicate it and I'll install this onto this new brake pad also. But I'll first clean this up. I'll apply a little bit of brake grease on here. I'll also apply some brake grease on the end here. Now install the brake pads. On the brake caliper, I'll put a little bit of brake grease on the surface right here. Now I can reinstall the caliper. Reinstall the 2 13mm bolt. Tighten these bolts to 27 foot-pounds. So this side is done. Repeat the same procedure on the other side. With both sides of the brakes done, go ahead and start the car. Next, pump the brake a couple of times until it stiffens up. Go ahead and engage your parking brake. The electronic parking brake will tighten itself to its new position. Now I'll show you how to retract the electronic parking brake using a scan tool. Keep in mind, if you're going to retract it manually like what I showed you earlier, then do that same procedure for both sides. If you're going to use a scan tool to retract the parking brake, then use a scan tool for both sides. Do not do one side with one method and then do the other side with a different method, because that will throw off the calibration of the electronic parking brake and result in very expensive damage to the VSA modulator. This one here is the Kingbolen K7 OBD scan tool. On the main screen, select scan. Now in scan you have auto search. This will automatically search for the type of vehicle you have. Let's do that. Let's go into service function. Let's go into brake pad replacement, brake pad maintenance mode. Okay. So here I can choose enter brake pad maintenance mode. And what that will do is retract the parking brake on this vehicle. And after I'm done, I'll set it to back to normal mode. Let's try that right now and you'll be able to hear the electronic parking brake retracting on the vehicle. Now select OK. So the gear inside is now retracted. Now I can use this tool to push a piston in. With everything put back together on this side, now you can replace a brake on the other side. With both sides done, I'll set the brake pad maintenance mode back to normal mode. Go ahead and start the car. Next, pump the brake a couple of times until it stiffens up. At this time, the brake job is complete. You can reinstall the wheel and tighten the lug nuts to 94 foot-pounds. Go for a test drive, find a quiet road and test the brakes, and make sure everything works well. And this is how you do the rear brake service on this generation of Honda Odyssey. I hope you found this video to be helpful. For a list of tools and parts used in this video, check out the link below. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching this video. To support this channel, remember to click on thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification bell so you get notified of new videos.